Claire didn't know about the messages. That was the part Daniel had thought about most. In the quiet moments between appointments and ordinary evenings, whether silence was protecting her or simply delaying something she deserved to know. It had started small, the way these things usually do. A message from Renee a few months into Claire's treatment, framed as concern. "I just want to make sure you're really thinking this through." Daniel had read it twice, unsure how to respond, and eventually settled on something short and honest, that he was thinking it through every day, and his answer hadn't changed. Renee hadn't stopped there. Over the following months, the messages kept coming, always wrapped in language that sounded like love. "I just don't want you to feel trapped later. Some people aren't built for this kind of hard. I've seen relationships fall apart under less." Daniel never showed them to Claire. He didn't respond with anger. He simply kept doing what he'd already been doing, quietly, without narrating it for credit. Driving Claire to early infusion appointments before work, learning, clumsily at first, how to help her manage a wig on mornings she was too exhausted to do it herself, sitting beside her in waiting rooms, phone face down, because he didn't want her to catch him anxiously checking the time. He wasn't performing steadiness for anyone. He simply was steady, in the unremarkable way people rarely notice until it's tested. The rehearsal dinner was small, warm, exactly the kind of gathering Claire had wanted. Close family, a handful of friends, string lights over a patio that smelled like rosemary and candle wax. Renee stood to give a toast partway through dinner, glass in hand, smiling in the practiced way she always did before public speaking. Her words started warmly enough. She talked about Claire's strength, her resilience, how proud she was of her sister for fighting so hard this year. But as the toast continued, something shifted. Subtle, easy to miss if you weren't listening closely. She mentioned hoping Daniel truly understood what he was signing up for. She said she admired people who could handle hard seasons, because not everyone can. She raised her glass to hope, in a tone that sounded less like celebration and more like a warning dressed in nice clothing. The room felt it before anyone could name it. Claire's smile faltered slightly, uncertain whether she was imagining an edge that wasn't really there. A few guests exchanged quick glances. Daniel didn't react outwardly. He simply waited, patient, until Renee sat back down. Then he stood. He didn't look at Renee. He looked at Claire the way he always did when something mattered. "I want to tell you about a Tuesday," he said, his voice calm, unhurried, clearly something he'd thought through rather than improvised. Back in March, Claire had a 6 a.m. infusion, and I remember sitting in the car outside the clinic before they opened, watching her sleep in the passenger seat because she was too tired to keep her eyes open the night before. I didn't wake her early. I just sat there, in the dark, thinking about how strange it was that this, sitting in a parking lot at 5:40 in the morning, had become one of the most important parts of my week. He paused, letting the room settle into the specificity of it. "There was another morning," he continued, "when she couldn't get her wig to sit right, and her hands were shaking too much from treatment to fix it herself. I didn't know how to braid hair. I still don't, not really. But I learned enough, badly, clumsily, because it mattered to her, and that meant it mattered to me." He looked around the table briefly, then back to Claire. "I've had people this year question whether I understood what I was choosing," he said, still without naming anyone. "And I want to say clearly in front of everyone here, I didn't need convincing. I'm not marrying the version of Claire who has an easy year. I'm marrying Claire, all of it. The exhausting mornings and the ordinary Tuesdays and every version of her that exists in between." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was full. Renee sat very still, her glass resting untouched in front of her. She wasn't confronted directly. Daniel never said her name, never referenced the messages. But something in his words made the shape of her fear visible to her in a way it hadn't been before. She realized, watching her sister's hand find Daniel's under the table, that her months of private warnings hadn't protected Claire from anything. They had simply created distance from a relationship that had never needed defending in the first place. Claire didn't say anything that night about the toast, or about whatever tension had passed silently between her sister and her fiancé. She simply held Daniel's hand a little tighter and let the evening continue. Later, privately, Renee found Claire in the kitchen and apologized, not with excuses about protecting her, but with an honest admission that her fear had turned into control she never had the right to exercise. Claire listened, quiet for a moment, then accepted it, not because the apology erased anything, but because she recognized the courage it took to say it plainly. The wedding, the next day, was simple and unremarkable in the best possible way. No further toasts carried hidden edges. No further warnings needed correcting. What Claire understood, watching Daniel across the room later that evening, wasn't that he had defended her dramatically. It was that he never needed to. He had simply kept showing up, consistently, long before anyone was watching closely enough to notice, and when it finally mattered, that consistency spoke for itself.